Disrupting yourself in certain ways is painful but important in order to have long-term success.
There wasn't really a large fintech that with a clear playbook to say like, hey, this is how you scale this thing to many millions of users.
There's probably times we were trying to, do too much or trying to do, different paths across the board.
How you kind of navigated public fintech with this kind of dirty word of crypto whilst trying to deploy a potential cannibalistic product.
Views are personal, not investment advice.
This is Money Code. It's a show where we decode stablecoins and agentic finance. I'm Chuk Okpalugo.
And I'm Parekh. And today we have my Zabeneh, GM of crypto at PayPal. Hopefully I got that right, but excited to have you here to talk about all things PayPal and crypto. Lots of cool announcements coming up as well. Maybe we can just dive in, and maybe if you can unpack, what you guys are, recently announced, pretty big expansion of the PYUSD story. But yeah, would love to hear it in your own words, just, what the magnitude and impact of this specific announcement as well.
Yeah, this is a pretty significant one for us. We're very passionate not only about obviously our payments experience and decades of that in the industry, but then applying it and bringing blockchain to really help drive more efficiency. But really, the rubber hits the road on this when you actually need to then apply it into access and distribution. And that's what really makes it differentiated and why we get really excited. And so this announcement's pretty monumental for us because this is really showcasing the ability to have PYUSD now in about 70 countries in the PayPal wallet around the world. And that's really powerful because what that means is now the PayPal wallets can drive more engagement, more meaningful utility, and for consumers to really be able to earn, send, and spend, and be able to take that value proposition and flywheel it, and especially in countries around the world where it's really meaningful. And so that gets us really excited, and that gets us really passionate about what we're doing. And this is really a perfect application and showcase of the ability to take stablecoins and then apply it in a very meaningful way.
70 countries is a huge effort. Can you just break down why that's so hard? I think for the crypto people listening, crypto is already global. It's already, you spin up a wallet and it's everywhere. For the TradFi folks listening, I'm sure they're nodding their heads saying, wow, 70 countries. Like, what did you have to go through in each of the various different compliance and levels? Maybe you could just break that down for folks on like the challenges that you had to overcome.
Yeah, I love that question. And actually, it's really funny because internally we also ensure that we differentiate because of course, it's global, it's open, that's what stablecoins are. But when you think about it in a custodial fashion, opening it in PayPal wallets, that's so different from an effort perspective, end-to-end perspective. You have to think about everything, the customer as they enter into the journey, the information that's needed that will be compliant, regulatory forward, applying to all the different aspects of the world. You think about the end-to-end aspects of what does it mean for them to engage? What does it mean? What's the experience? How simple is it? What does it holistically mean, and how their customers' expectations are from risk or liability, from disputes, from just the entire customer care angle. It really is a pretty big lift and effort, and it really challenges you as a business unit, as a product leaders that we have on our team, our engineering team, to really think about everything from the happy path use cases to the edge use cases and what that experience would be, making sure it's seamless, making sure the customer really understands it, and then the obviously critical aspects of all around that, which is we're a regulatory forward, compliance forward organization. That's been our DNA. But obviously the crypto world, it changes things a little bit. It brings in new aspects that you have to think about. And so these are all the things that we've spent months and months on end really debating, thinking about, and then building and to this moment.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we often talk a lot about in this podcast is stablecoins help you go global. But to your point, there's all these different parts and pieces, from compliance to engineering to the product itself. Maybe if you can just help break down what is the product experience for someone that's maybe in one of these 70 countries. And I think a lot of folks may be familiar with the US centric experiences, but what does that mean for someone outside the United States or wherever you guys are live to actually use PYUSD and stablecoins also?
Yeah, so what we think is super powerful about this is it's in some of these markets and countries they can't even hold like balance today. So like the functionality and utility of our PayPal app in these markets is not fully robust. So in the US we get spoiled because there's like almost everything that we have from a functionality perspective. But as we know, like for companies of our size and magnitude, scaling locally into all geographies, the same capabilities is usually a longer term path that's a little bit harder to do for many different reasons that we've talked about. And so what's really powerful about this is now like a customer in a PayPal customer in Colombia or a PayPal customer in Peru or different parts of the world can now open their app and actually have more utility with it. They'll be able to hold a stable coin. They'll be able to earn 4% rewards on it. They'll be able to send to almost anyone, right, anywhere. Eventually, like we'll continue to obviously enhance and add functionality into the experiences. So now it really becomes almost in a financial account, but a stable coin as the predominant kind of balance within it. And what I love about it, because it not only gives people in these markets utility, it gives obviously the halo of the entire brand, of like PayPal's brand and trust from an app perspective. But then it gives them more utility that's meaningful to their daily lives. And I think that's really what we strive for, is like the purpose behind it all. That's why I've been in crypto. That's why this really is very passionate, and meaningful to me, is how do you apply it to drive value back to consumers and merchants around the world.
Yes, I think that's a point that's maybe not talked about enough. This is essentially going to be dropped in the hands of millions of consumers and businesses around the world in a familiar application. And so, as you said, we can talk about, what custodial means, but, you've had to do a lot of work to make sure that that's safe, compliant, and easy to use. But essentially, lots of individuals around the world now are holding a dollar equivalent, a PYUSD dollar equivalent, without having to download something new. Maybe it's an update. But as you say, the experience is varied across the world. But now you've got essentially in certain areas, a savings account that pays rewards, and then you can transfer essentially global Venmo, because anybody else who has that PayPal account, you can now transfer between them. You've got merchant acceptance with stables where they can hold it in dollars. And so I feel like the implication for the individuals in each country as you go through is actually really, really significant. And yes, I think if you're building in crypto, this is what you're trying to achieve, and you have to do work to get the brand to a level where everyone recognizes your like blue and white logo. But for PayPal, you can integrate that trust. And so as you think about broadening the landscape of users who can have access, what of the key challenges do you think are necessary to overcome? User experience is one. Crypto lingo, talking about a stablecoin and an address. Are people going to be sending to hashes? Are they going to be sending to names? How do you think about onboarding the millions of users?
Yeah, and I'd love to ask you actually your opinions too, because there's this whole debate on like should crypto and stablecoins even be the umbrella of together, right? Because in a sense, like when you hear the word crypto, and a lot of consumers do, they actually start to think about different things like investments or potentially volatility. And when you think about stablecoins, there's the whole idea of like stability, and it's one, at least in PYUSDs, it's 1-to-1 to the US dollar. And so sometimes, and touching to your point of things to overcome, is education. And education from things that have been ingrained in people because they hear crypto holistically, and it comes with many different aspects. But then when you're trying to actually help people understand it's actually a stable coin, which yes, it's a cryptocurrency, but it's stable. You always have it to redeem it 1-to-1, and in PayPal in our ecosystem, that becomes like a very interesting era of like differentiation and education, and really starting to apply it more into a payments aspect, which is where I fundamentally believe like there's an emerging of this as a trend. And we've been in trading as a crypto industry, and there's been phenomenal work that's been done there. And I see what excites us is obviously the payments aspect of the emerging and the application of it.
Yeah, crypto has a bad name. At the end of the day, it's wild. I was filling out this form on a website, and just to get access to some kind of community. and they were saying, okay, you need to be over a certain age, can't be from these countries, and don't sell crypto. Don't talk about crypto here. And that was just the kind of entrance into it. And it's taken, unfortunately, like a 10-year cycle of scams and bad coverage by the media, a lot of it well-deserved, that it's going to be hard to reverse that. And I think there's a sense of the digital dollar. Stablecoins may be hard to even describe, but just digital dollar, the PayPal dollar. Hey, this is essentially a dollar in your account, like any other account, and you can just send it around. I think that's what a lot of different neobank apps are using. It's just, hey, there's a value here, you can move it. No crypto lingo or association.
Yeah, I love digital value because, and I love the idea of like taking away complexity is just, you don't have to understand how they work. You don't really, probably most people don't, or I'd say some people don't know even how money today moves, just even how the dollar moves. And so when you think of like issuers, acquirers, and you think of networks, you think of all these aspects I don't know that most people think about. And so I love the idea of like that simplification of just here's a value that you can move that stays stable, that, by the way, you can earn, send, spend, and it gives you more flexibility. It gives you more value back into your pockets, right? Your hard-earned money that people remit or people send home. It's like, why have those 5 to 10% costs like be taken out from that? Because it's so meaningful at the end of the day. And so that gets us like super excited because it just really, you can see the power of what it can bring and the value, and if you can simplify it in a way, but obviously help people understand what they're getting into, so you don't want to oversimplify, but we also don't need to talk about too much of the details of the mechanics. I don't know that that's as meaningful.
I mean, one thing that when I think about PayPal a lot is, I mean, kind of what you and Chuk alluded to is there's definitely trust, and you guys have earned that over decades at this point, just being like the original fintech in my mind. And I think one of the things that I think about when I think about PayPal outside the United States is like the criticality of like use case. This isn't like I'm gonna go like speculate on assets. They use PayPal for, to your point, like getting paid as a business or sending funds to friends and family overseas that might need to like pay for a medical bill or sometimes something that's urgent as well. And so like the simplicity and the speed of like being able to send that value over is incredibly important. I guess like, from the work that you guys have done, like how do you guys think about just like one, like still continue to own that trust with that user, but at the same time start to like also introduce like new innovation at the same time too? I think it's really tough, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but maybe just like walk us through, because there's actually more you can do on top of stablecoins because it's programmable. There's a DeFi element that can come from this as well. There's more you can stack on top, but maybe if you can also give us a sneak peek to like the future roadmap as well.
Yeah, it might be an elephant too, as you said, as those, a little slip there. But, here's the thing, like, I think you need to start with foundations, right? So I think you can't jump necessarily into things unless you really believe there's a product market fit of a specific use case that works perfectly, and then that's the one you unlock. But for us, the way we're really thinking about it is, how do you unlock the foundations? Like, how do you even first allow and enable the ability to hold the stablecoin in these wallets, right, first, and then how do you enable these basics of what I think are expectations? You need to have the ability to earn, send, spend. Now, to your point, could you take earn even further and take that into a much different way? Could you take the send and spend also into materially different ways? Spend could be, for example, you could think about, different cards. One day you can imagine there'd be like a card that you can take everywhere and spend, right? Could be further integrations on merchant sites. On the send, you could make things simpler in how to send it, from simplifying the addresses down into different ways. So there's so much to build from, and that's, to your point, that becomes programmable. If you think about B2B, I mean, my gosh, like the ways that you could do programmability into like a B2B and use that from a settlement, right? It's instant settlement, and now you can actually contractually say, hey, if I received even if it's physical, I received these goods, then do a payment. Like, you can actually think about invoicing, think about cost of capital. There is so much that can be applied that you can then take further and segment. But without the foundations of like integrating it into payments, giving people like access to hold in an account, it's very hard to start. So I feel like that's the kind of the journey that we've been working really hard to build in this past about year, I'd say. You've seen us launch like Pay with Crypto for merchants, ability for customers around the world to be able to, whatever wallet they choose, to be able to pay on a PayPal merchant site. So now finally connecting these, crypto users to more of the traditional like merchants within our network. Payouts allowing kind of the reverse, allowing now merchants who think about gig economy, think about like marketplaces, to be able to now pay users in their preferred choice that they want to get paid. And if that's to their bank, no problem. If that's a wire, no problem. And by the way, if it's to a stablecoin, we offer now PYUSD, and that helps them hedge, especially in countries where there's high inflation, that helps them receive a stable currency that then they can, when they choose, and the prices, the FX rate is right for them, they could convert it, or by the way, they could keep it, hold it, and then send it and pay somebody else in it. So these are like the foundations when we think of the building blocks of payments, pay-ins, payouts, and then the account on being able to hold. We feel that we need to first build. And then it becomes, I think you'll start to see, as the year evolves and next year, you start to see then the manifestation of like deeper and more other experiences that we can bring to life.
Yeah, the scale that you guys operate at is so large that, it makes sense to start at the foundations, make sure that the experience is consistent, make sure that you get the user education part that you mentioned earlier, right? And then I love how you broke down the various different use cases, for consumers, for businesses, across payments, pay in, pay out, and then treasury, and then FX management. There's just so many things that go on behind the scenes that as a business, you don't really want to spend much time on. You want to grow your business. And then, in terms of use cases, we're going to be talking about agentic payments soon towards the end of the episode as well. So that's another one to discuss. And we'd love to also chat about the navigating, how getting all this done inside an existing organization that has a cross-border business, which, potentially can profit from, the lack of the ability to be able to move dollars. And now you have this ability to kind of achieve the goal. But first, maybe let's start with the evolution. There's been a long journey of PYUSD since 2023. One of the earliest, pioneers really launching before it was cool to have, in fintech branded stablecoins, and there's been a lot of I'm sure lessons along the way. So from initially having buy sell hold in the app to now you mentioned the partnerships, MoonPay and M0. You have PYUSDX that's become like a developer tool for other stablecoins. So there's a lot of, I'm sure, paths you've taken and learned from. Can you talk a bit more about what you've learned there?
Yeah, conviction matters, and have grit and resilience. And I'd say the attributes that are extremely important is that, and never losing sight of purpose. So I think there's obviously we were the first fintech to launch our branded stablecoin at a time when it wasn't really popular to have your own stablecoin at the time. So having the purpose and that conviction to say we really believe it's fundamentally can help and better our customers' lives at the end of the day, and kind of bring forward, and payments matters. And so I think that the most kind of foundational lessons, maybe for me to when I look back at this journey, right, is knowing what you're solving for, and that comes with that purpose and conviction, and not losing sight of it. There's so much in this industry that's possible, and so much that you can do, and lose a little focus and kind of dilute your resourcing around. But we all know there's a finite amount of resourcing, a finite amount of time. And as this market moves so fast, it's important to also stay ahead of it. And so I think there's probably times we were trying to, do too much, or trying to do, different paths across the board. So being able to step back and say, okay, where will we really be able to win? What's our focus? Where are we convicted around our purpose in it? And then how to really, and I know this sounds honestly like you're like, duh, of course, because you do that in every day in every business. But the reality is that's the truth. I mean, that's what it is. It's really just a discipline around operating a business, and figuring out what success is and your differentiation points. And for us, our differentiation is having our own branded stablecoin and a powerful network of consumers and merchants around the world that we can actually connect and integrate this into payments. And that's a unique differentiator to us. And so how do we now take that and then learn, like, how do you drive adoption? How do you drive flywheel effects? Because now it's a new value in the ecosystem. And I think when I look ahead, like, to what challenges do I think we're going to, or opportunities that we're going to need to overcome, and that is exactly that. It's like, how do you ignite this flywheel? How do you drive adoption? How do you drive activation? Because integration is one thing, but second becomes the real, like, unlock, which is the usage, and there's going to be organic and inorganic usage of that. So that's really how I think about it. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. You're both, like, builders in the space. You've both had such different paths.
I mean, I still remember being super excited when PayPal first launched PYUSD, and I was like, wow, this, like, really legitimized, like, the stablecoin thesis and, like, a large fintech with distribution network effects. And so I remember being particularly really excited about it. And still, I think it's, when you guys launched, there was no playbook on how to really scale and grow a stablecoin, if I'm being honest. You have the first mover effects that, Tether kind of just got lucky with, right, with trade settlement. USDC was obviously there, and, they were starting to push their playbook across different areas. But there wasn't really, like, a large fintech that with a clear playbook to say, like, hey, this is how you scale this thing to, like, many billions or many millions of users. I think what you are announcing is actually a really interesting culmination of that entire, like, thesis that you just pointed out of, hey, we have this really strong trust and brand. We have this distribution. We have this network of users and businesses. And now we think we can stitch all this together. But by the way, it takes, like, a really large cross-functional effort from legal, compliance, engineering, product, right? And then the grit and perseverance, which, you could attribute to, like, any company building. So in my mind, like, I think these things do take time to build. This isn't like, you don't Claude code PYUSD into, like, many different apps and experiences. This is, like, the hard things, being done. And so with that in mind, like, I think this is, like, you guys are again charting, like, a new playbook to continue to grow this thing as well. So that's my quick take on it. It's really, I know how hard it is, and it's cool that you guys are, fighting the good fight as well.
Yeah, there was no playbook. The playbook didn't exist, right? I was at Paxos at the time. For those who know, we were, and everyone was, and it still is, excited about the PYUSD launch and the stablecoin itself. I think thinking about a technology that's open and global, like blockchain and stablecoins, it's really easy for anyone to build and deploy, and so it's hard to build network effects. Like Raj said, there's those examples for Tether and Circle, but you think about the range of firms who do have a consumer network and the range of firms who have a business network, and then the cross-section of firms who have a network on both sides. And there's only a few of those firms, and PayPal is one of them. And so a stablecoin works very, very well, particularly not just across consumers and businesses, but across PayPal entities globally. And so it was a natural starting point, but with any frontier, when you write the playbook, you have to kind of figure things out along the way. And I'm sure that you guys learned a lot of lessons from experiments and trying new things, and that's what you have to do. And I guess there's the frontier, and then there's operating in a large public company. The tension there is definitely, I'm sure, palpable. Could you talk about the natural tension and how you kind of navigated public fintech with this kind of dirty word of crypto, whilst trying to deploy a new potential, cannibalistic product potentially, or it could also be the savior, who knows? Like, can you talk a bit through that and how that happens in a big firm like PayPal?
Yeah, I think of it as a defensive and offensive position almost. There's no doubt, like, stablecoins are part of payments future and commerce future, and so you have to build towards a future. And disrupting yourself in certain ways is painful, but important in order to have long-term success. It isn't easy, like especially in obviously large organizations, you have different priorities for different teams, but we don't build everything independently, right? Because we need the broader network in order to get that scale. And so I think aligning kind of goals, priorities, and education, honestly, also because it's a thing that will not bring short-term revenue to my colleagues in the different business units, right? It's more a longer term play. So the education of like, here's how it strategically ties to the long term, being able to negotiate some, some friendlies within the organization that have that passion and belief, and then prioritize that as part of whatever 5% of the their roadmap capacity in order to build with you to do that. And so I think those are just from when you think of like just pure product and eng side of the house, and then you go to the other side, which is the reg legal compliance, and you start introducing a lot of complexity. It's complexity from a sense that it's a different way. It's not fiat, and we're used to fiat, and that's how all our systems operate, and everybody knows kind of the ins and outs. And now you're in this new frontier. Like, not all regulation has been sorted out, not all of the implications from a legal perspective, not all the aspects of like, what does it mean? And so, we've been blessed in a sense, because there's been a lot of advocates, a lot of executive leaders who are also advocates, and kind of seeing that this is the future, and then figuring out kind of our paths through it. But those are kind of the hurdles you usually get into. It's like, are the incentives aligned? Are we thinking long term, holistically, in where we want to build? And then just really being able to articulate the value that at the end of the day you can bring, and then finding those players to be able to go on this journey with you through some of the ups and downs. And no, it's not easy. But the beauty of all this is the flip side of it. You have a super excited and ignited organization. And so I can't tell you like how many people across our orgs just are like so excited. They're like, oh, I saw the momentum here. I saw this announcement. Like, it really builds this, because it's innovation being built, and driven, and has a halo effect in the industry. And this latest announcement for us, like the expansion of engagement of PayPal wallets, has really now fundamentally like seeded that in people's minds. We're not a side crypto project, right? We're actually embedding and driving and unlocking growth and value for our customers, consumers, and merchants around the world. So the more we build, and we've been pretty, we're high operators, so our say-do ratios are high, and so when the more we build, the more we integrate, the more that people will our teams will feel also like that connectivity around it. And one of the perfect examples on the payment side was actually Payouts. That was one of the first integrated use cases that we started to build on the payment side of the house. And so we had met with that team. They already have super strong reach. Our Payouts product allows like marketplaces and tons of sizes and different types of business to pay out to their consumers around the world in the different currencies that they want. But they didn't have stablecoins as part of that. And so it was an addition. It enhanced their value prop to even provide more options to the businesses that they're serving. It helps the consumers at the end of the day, because it gives them more reach and choice. And so that was a really fantastic engagement with that team, because you could see how excited they were on the potential, the value it could give their own particular product. And then together, like, we've been on this journey, building, testing, and then launching partners and merchants on that. And there was an announcement you might have seen with Google adopting it on YouTube for US creators. And so that provides like a win now for both sides of the house, and more powerful functionality that gets used.
Yeah, and all the hard work of navigating internally, educating internal teams about the differences of fiat and wallets and what a financial account is on the blockchain versus within your various different banks and treasury, I'm sure it pays off when talking to large clients and you say, hey guys, we figured this out. We had to figure it out for ourselves, and now we can help you with various different payouts. And that's the position that you guys have, because you do both, payments for merchants and consumers, but then also for businesses who also have cross-border payment requirements.
Yeah, and it's even, we take it a step further because what we do is we say, hey, business, like for our payouts product, you don't need to touch crypto, you don't need to own crypto, you don't need to know, like you just need to know there's people around the world that want to get paid with PYUSD, with a stablecoin. And we will help take all that complexity. So we not only take complexity away from, when I say like customers, it's actually consumers and merchants. Our pay with crypto product, same thing. The merchant gets paid in fiat. If they want to, we're going to build a functionality and have that for them to get paid and settle in PYC also. But today, nothing has to change from their operating systems, from the reporting, and that's the beauty of being this like bridge for the traditional players and bridging cryptocurrencies or stable coins holistically into the world, and being this partner that understands their needs as a business and being able to allow them in an easy way to mitigate that end. So I love that you said that, because it is exactly the angle that I think what makes this intersection so powerful.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's super interesting about this is that oftentimes in the, taking it to the crypto space, is that the crypto folks always talk about, we want to get the next millions of users, using crypto, so to speak, is like always like a common adage that's been, or billions, right? That's like always the common adage. But here, like, you're actually doing that. And the funny thing is that you are, taking that complexity away also, but it's always hard to like truly like, earn the respect of the crypto native builders at the same time too, when you're like, hey, we're actually like, you are actually taking their mission and actually like taking it even further and providing this type of product in the first place. And I guess maybe like I'm curious just like how you've been able to balance like the crypto, the crypto native efforts, or some of the other experiments that you guys have run, with also just like taking like the pragmatic approach of building really just good products that are useful and valuable for people too.
Yeah, so we think the crypto ecosystem's super, super important, right? And so to your point, there's kind of the two dimensions. There's a dimension of like building and furthering the mission into more connective and mainstream users. I mean, that's really what we're doing, is bridging to the mainstream. But still, the crypto ecosystem in itself and the nativity of it is really important. And so I think you had mentioned, I think it was you, Chuk, who had mentioned earlier on like a PYUSDX announcement, so a partnership with, or as we think about MoonPay and M0, like it's a perfect example of where they're providing infrastructure, they're providing capabilities, and then using, then there's PYUSD as a reserve asset, behind the scenes on it. And so what this shows you is there's a ton still to be built. There's a ton of connectivity and trust that you can lean in both ways. We can lean and develop and build into the mainstream aspect of payments and traditional pay providers, merchants, and consumers. And then with the crypto native industry, we can lean in and provide kind of the use cases and the value around there that can actually still further and drive the native ecosystem even more. And that's what I love about being in this position. And so because you can help both worlds, but at the end of the day, it's like, what is it? Rising tide lifts all boats. And that's kind of what we really believe in.
Absolutely. I was just about to say something similar. The interoperability between TradFi and crypto or stablecoins is where the growth is happening. And there's so many different analogies from history, thinking about Skype and how voice over IP, and how once you can connect one side, then the network can grow itself. And I think this is a similar situation to, say, Visa, MasterCard, and the stablecoin backed cards. By bridging the gap, we're actually increasing utility for stablecoins in general, because now somebody who has a PayPal account will say, oh, how can I send you money? So wait, do you have a PayPal account? I can just send you, just click this button. You didn't even know about it, but click this button, get your address, and I'll send you stablecoins directly. And so that brings up a huge amount of surface area for people to now interact. And that's where all the magic happens, with people building integrations, and lots of new paths for liquidity and use cases are now unlocked because of these bridges that have now been deployed to 70 countries and millions of users. So it is a rising tide lifts all boats situation. And I think there's complementary elements on both sides. And so how do you think about what's next? I think as you launch, you make this huge announcement, there's, I'm sure, lots of celebrations, but then now it's live. Okay, what are you what came up in the pre-mortem? Like, what are you guys watching? What metrics are you kind of looking at very closely? I'd love to understand kind of how you're thinking about this operationally.
Yeah, so obviously live and make sure it's working as seamlessly as possible, monitor that from just a hygiene and health perspective. But really what we care about is volume. So are people adopting and are people actually transacting and moving volume? At the end of the day, that's what's going to be what matters. And so that's going to be what we'll be doing next, is really doubling down and thinking about go-to-market, think about partnerships locally, think about how do you really activate it? How do you drive the adoption? Who are the users who adopt? How do you get your monthly active? So the same KPIs, as normal, which is like your monthly active users or your new actives that or GNA, like new actives that come in, as well as in the volume. And that's ultimately money at move is really what we want, because we're a payments company. That's really what matters, or value that moves. But we'll have to think of both sides. We'll also probably double down and think about specific geographies within those 70. What lessons are we going to learn? What insights are we going to get? Every country is obviously super unique and different. And then what else we're going to look at what else could be missing? Like there's a phase 1 type of bundle that you go to market with, and then there's a phase 2, 3 that you need to continue to enhance, to continue to drive the utility and aspects. And that's what people will expect. And we need to keep up with what people will want.
Does AI play a role?
So I think AI is great. Obviously, AI helps in so many different aspects, like every day. I think for me, where AI gets super, super interesting is like AI will need programmable money. I mean, I think if you think of, it depends on what everybody's vision of where AI goes, right? And if you think of agents to agents and you think of these aspects of where it goes, that will need programmable money to interact. Doesn't mean it's the only currency, but I do believe it will be a predominant currency within it. So I think there are future use cases as AI continues to evolve that will become very interesting from a commerce perspective. Now, whether that's B2B, whether that's like there's still, or whether it is a B2C that launches first, I think maybe B2B feels to me like a very right place where AI and kind of the programmable aspect of stablecoins could really take off. But these are things that we'll continue to watch. We'll continue to see, explore, see, investigate, do some research, and then maybe do hopefully some pilots. But it's a little further out for us, as we obviously got a pretty stacked roadmap up front. But I'm curious where you think AI and crypto is going.
I guess first off, to your point, you guys have a front row seat, which is really cool, because there's not a lot of companies that can say they have, stablecoin accounts across 70 plus countries, plus have like the merchant connectivity, plus have like the users. So what's really cool is that you guys will have a front row seat and the data and the volume to kind of see how these things can, coalesce. Maybe an agent ends up, maybe you guys make it super simple for them to have a PayPal account, in Colombia or Peru or something along those lines, right? And they can then transact on behalf of their merchants. So I think there might be a fun way for you guys to just get organic feedback from your customer base also. At least, my point of view is like, we still have a lot of room to run. There's still like, I think there's a lot of experiments happening that's really cool. Like we've been running a lot of, hackathons, and we've seen, all sorts of random use cases that are some that are just using cards, right? Just like fiat rails, and some that might be using stablecoins also. So it's not very apparent at the moment right now, but what's cool is that you want to be able to observe and monitor how these things take off. And ideally, if you have the connective tissue like you guys do, you guys will have the best seat in the house too.
Yeah. From my side, I think it's all about connectivity and making things easy. The merchants just want to get paid. And so give me every possible payment method. If that is stablecoins, if that's PYUSD, if that's the PayPal Direct, if it's Visa, if it's cash, sure, I'll take it. I'm selling my thing. I want to grow my business. And then on the payment side, folks will just want to do what's most convenient for them and where they get their incentives. But I think increasingly things will be delegated, and you'll delegate things to your team. and some of your team members may be agents, but they'll still go through the guardrailed kind of policy approved paths, which, you know, could be expense managed cards, could be expense managed direct payments, but things need to fit within the existing system. And so I think if you are part of a payment system, which, you know, obviously you guys are, and you have several different products, I think like the current trend where we are is just making everything accessible via APIs so that the agents can build skills to then pay with card or PYUSD or direct PayPal. And so I think if you make it really, really discoverable, I think discoverability with agents is just this really painful thing. It's like, it's right there, just find it. The way to pay someone is you look up their email, it resolves at PayPal, and you get a PYUSD address. Then the path of least resistance will be, oh, I'm just going to go get PYUSD and send it, because that's how they resolve. And there's all these different ways that people are figuring out how to get agentic payments to work. I think that you just, from first principles, you know, what's the job to be done? Usually the merchant just wants to get paid as quickly as possible, but mostly by as broad a set of people as possible. And so it's very, very fast moving. There's a lot of room to run, as Raj says. And, you know, we're definitely keeping an eye on it on this show. So what's next as you think through the roadmap? You've got the phase 1, as you mentioned, and then phase 2. Do you think about that as countries or capabilities, or is it more of a marketing and go-to-market thing?
Yeah, I'd say capabilities plus go-to-market. I think continuing to enhance and build on the capabilities is going to be important. So we'll continue to do that. And then obviously go to market and you know, the ensuring there's adoption and activation. Yeah.
And then as we get close to the end here, I guess like one final question. I mean, what I'm really excited about is that I used to joke with people, like a lot of companies used to say like, oh, like I'm building global Venmo. And like in my mind, I'm like, global Venmo should just be PayPal. And what you're doing here is actually all of that, which is really, really cool. Maybe if you just had to break it down, maybe, you know, 2 to 3 or 5 years from now, like, you know, you're sitting at this really cool seat. We've talked about all the front row, you know, action you should see as like the next, you know, technology trends like start to grow. But, you know, what are you specifically really excited about? And, you know, you mentioned a few times earlier in the episode around, you know, purpose. Maybe what's like the purpose for you guys now, and what's the vision for the future?
Great question. Gosh, I wish I could predict 3 to 5 years down from here. It's industry's moving so fast, and AI too, from such a like rapid speed. I think for me, we will know we've succeeded. Maybe I'll answer it kind of in that lens. If we've done 2 things. One, which is use stablecoins as a backend infrastructure so people don't even need to know, but we've used it to drive more efficiency for the commerce movement of value around the world. So that to me is, and that's a multi-year journey, right? This isn't a flip a switch and you do it. So I think that to me will be a metric of success at the end. And then the second would be how much or what percentage as we think of, like, especially, and in Chuk, you've mentioned this, and Raju too, like on cross-border payments, is like as you think of like what percentage of cross-border, you think of like the basically the volume flows that are happening, how much have we unlocked as new growth and how much have we optimized the efficiencies in existing ones. So I think to me that's where just holistically, like where I think of where I'd want to be in 3 to 5 years of us having kind of crossed that and been. I think to me, what's super exciting as I think about like 3 to 5 years from now is just the possibilities we don't even know about. And they're almost even uncovering like day in and day out. And I love like some of the use cases you guys mentioned on like, hey, you could use AI and do this. You could like, so if you just think about the optimization and like so many ways to bring better experiences to market once you have these like foundational capabilities as they're continuing to evolve, I think that's the most exciting thing for me, because like, let's flywheel, and now let's like create these like unique, faster, better just so much more like more fun experiences that get ultimately what I want to do, which is exactly like Chuk, you said, hey, I just want to get paid as a merchant. But now imagine you get paid faster and it can provide a specific different value for you. And then it can so imagine your whole world just gets better from the things that, commerce at the end of the day, you get most excited as a consumer when you buy something and receive it. It's like not the fact that you had to pay for it, not the card that you chose, not the bill that comes afterwards. And so the more we can take these things and abstract, away on complexities and just make it, better for people, I think that's what drives us on purpose, is just giving back into the world, giving value back, especially to customers, and finding the ways and the creativity and the technology to be able to do that.
That's a great way to end. This has been a really, really good experience, kind of talking through all the plans that you guys have, and really excited to see the journey. It's been, it's very close to my heart in particular. So very excited to be telling people, oh, that stablecoin thing? Oh, yeah, just it's in PayPal. It's legit. Don't worry about it. So where can folks learn more about PayPal and yourself?
So PayPal, obviously, our website, standard places that they can go to our X handles, or others that the company has out. And for myself, LinkedIn is usually the easiest one, so people can just reach out, and I'm happy to engage.
Awesome. And you, Raj?
You can find me on X at rparekh, LinkedIn at Raj Parekh, and then mon@xyz.
And for me, stablecoinblueprint.com, X Chuk_XYZ, and LinkedIn Chuk Okpalugo. Maya, it's been great to have you, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Money Code. There was so much to take away from today's conversation. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too.
If you enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, share it with someone you know, or give us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. Until next time.